So I think that there might be some mismanagement in the lab you should know about.
Really? What's going on?
Well, we're being told to cherry-pick data on the validation studies. We're reporting accuracy of 95% when the real number is a lot lower. I mean, right now, if 100 people infected with syphilis were tested on the Edison, we would be telling 35 of them that they didn't have syphilis.
That can't be right.
That was a clip from the Emmy Award-winning Hulu series Dropout, but the real drama took place today in a California court. That's where Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes was sentenced to over 11 years. Joining me now, white-collar criminal defense attorney extraordinaire Sara Azari and Tyler Schultz. He was the Theranos whistleblower. It's great to have you both talk the law, and the big thing to start with, though, Tyler, is your sense of knowing what you know and knowing her and her role in it. Do you believe today justice was served?
Yeah, I do think that justice was served. During the trial, the judge said that the sentencing guidelines would put her between 11 and 14 years, and she was given 11 years, so I think that was a fair sentence. And there are a lot of external factors at play as well. You know, she's pregnant, she has a young child at home, she's very famous. So I'm happy to see that none of those external factors seem to really play a role in the sentencing.
Why are you happy to see that it didn't play a role? What do you want this audience to understand about why they shouldn't have sympathy for her because of the things you just said?
Well, I mean, she chose to, have these children when she knew that, significant prison time was on the table. So I don't think that should be a reason to decrease her prison time.
Based on what she did, what do you want people to understand about why she deserves that kind of prison time?
Yeah, I mean, so this was a massive fraud. This was not just a startup that failed. This was a startup that systematically defrauded investors of hundreds of millions of dollars and put patients' lives at risk. This was something needed to be done, and justice was slow, but I feel like we finally got it today.
Sara, you had a very interesting insight in the notes you sent me, which went right to the basis of, this judge, you know this forum, and because I want you to explain to the audience that this judge didn't just jump in for sentencing, and why you believe the judge's understanding of the case. I think their name is Davila.
Davila.
Take people through why Davila was the right person to sentence this, and what you think of the term.
Yeah, Chris, good to be with you. Davila was the presiding judge over this trial, and he was the sentencer, so he had intimate familiarity with the evidence that unfolded in this trial. And I can tell you that he was not happy because, as Tyler said, this was a double scheme. There was a scheme against the patients, there was a scheme duping the investors, and then the position of the defense of Holmes in her sentencing papers was really disingenuous. I mean, more so, like you say, Fugazi. There was an argument about there was no loss and there was no gain. So as you know, Chris, in a white-collar fraud case, it's all about the loss amount, right? And that's what determines the sentence. And so the argument of Holmes was these are really sophisticated investors in Silicon Valley, and so they took a risk, and there was no loss to them, and the company was doing really well after the Wall Street Journal uncovered everything, so that there was really no loss, and therefore the guidelines don't apply, and therefore she should get home confinement, which was just the most ridiculous argument to make. And then they also said there was no gain to her because she wasn't really lining her pockets like a Bernie Madoff in a Ponzi scheme, and that was also disingenuous because she owned millions of dollars worth of stocks in Theranos. So they lost credibility there, and I think, Chris, this sent a really loud and clear message just overall that white-collar crime is real crime and there's real punishment for it. And in Silicon Valley specifically, it sent the message that even though we as a society look to innovation, we encourage innovation, we're not going to allow innovation to shield shade. Where there's shade, there's accountability. And she's going to be one of many people that we're going to see face this type of a sentence. sentence. I think you know that the FTX cryptocurrency platform is under investigation now. The founder of Nikola, I think the electric vehicle startup, he was just recently indicted. So I think there's been a lot going on in this Silicon Valley startup world that has sort of not been really looked into as deeply, and it will.
New game, but still about con men. Let me ask you this, though, Sarah. Understanding sentencing the way you do, the fact that she has the baby and that she's pregnant, I mean, I do understand why that's resonating with so many people who are talking about this case, that would be a factor. How does a judge look at that?
Well, look, pregnancy, a lot of defendants use pregnancy, female defendants, as strategy. And it's not strategy, because it's one thing if you were already pregnant when you were indicted, but it's another thing to get pregnant. Like Tyler said, she's had 2 kids, knowing that there's a possibility of a hefty sentence. And there's also a little bit of arrogance in that. The feeling that you're so certain that you're not going to be locked up, that you're going to just keep popping out these kids. And I'll tell you something, the BOP does not have accommodations for pregnant women. You don't get the right bunk bed, you don't get the right prenatal care. When it's time to give birth, they're going to take you to a hospital to give birth, and then you have some limited time that's medically necessary with your baby, and then you go right back to your housing. So I think in this case, what the judge has done is said, okay, I'm going to give you time. You're due, I don't know when she's due, but apparently sometime before April. You can surrender in April and do your time. And of course, she's going to ask to be out on bond pending appeal of the conviction and the sentence. But pregnancy is really not a mitigating factor. In fact, Elizabeth Holmes had 0 mitigating factor. She's one of the very few defendants who comes before the court with no affliction, no addiction, no mental illness, no sort of unfortunate childhood events that would have led her to engage in criminal conduct. And that's what the government used to say the lack of mitigating circumstances is actually an aggravating factor, which was also Fugazi. But, you know, she really is a defendant who really came from a solid family and didn't really have any mitigating factor to explain this conduct for over 5 years.
Federal time, or whatever this time is there, is 11 years, 11 years?
11.25 years.
So is that what you serve, or is it like you get out for good behavior? How's the system work there?
So you serve 85% of that time. And with an offense like this, she would be in a minimum security BOP facility. She's probably qualifies for a lot of programs, and that's how she earns her good time, work time. But again, she still has to serve 85%. And so thinking about this child, you know, the child's probably going to be around 9 years old before she really starts to bond with her mother. It really was not a good idea.
I like that old school finger on the ear correspondent vibe you got going there right now.
It's falling out. My ear's too big.
You're like one of Murrow's. It's like you're in London when London's falling. Tyler, let me ask you something while Sarah gets the IFB straight. Knowing Holmes the way you do, the idea of how aggressively she will commit to fighting the conviction. I think she's got 2 weeks to put in an appeal on the conviction, let alone on the sentence. Is this somebody who's going to, like, serve their time and try to get this over with, or is it about fighting it to the last?
Oh, she will fight as long as she possibly can. There's no doubt about that. You know, she's already racked up, I think, around $30 million in legal fees, and I don't see her slowing down. If there's any possibility to fight, she's going to fight.
Do you believe that she understands what she did and knows what she did and knows that it was wrong?
I think she knows all of those things, yes, but it still seems like she doesn't quite take accountability for those things. She still kind of points to others. You know, it was Sonny's fault. Mm-hmm. It was the investor's fault. It was her board's fault. You know, she doesn't seem to really take accountability for what happened, even though I think she does recognize that what she did was not right.
Something that the judge seemed to pick up on also, that she wasn't owning any of it. Sara Azari, you're great, and thank you. Tyler, I really respect what you did here on behalf of the investors and the people who are at that company, and thank you for coming here tonight. Good luck going forward.
Thanks so much.